Welcome to this explainer. We're going to jump right in today because our story starts in literally one of the most terrifying, high-stakes situations you could possibly imagine. Just put yourself inside a sealed, secret Soviet military bunker. It's just after midnight on September 26, 1983. Out of nowhere, the dead silence is completely shattered. Alarms are blaring. The computer screens in front of you are flashing with a report that is basically the ultimate nightmare scenario. The United States has just launched a nuclear missile straight toward the Soviet Union. And the panic, it just keeps building. As the seconds tick by in that bunker, the system detects another launch, and then another. This situation is escalating at just an unthinkable speed. If this warning is real, a global nuclear war might literally be beginning right in front of your eyes. But if the warning's false and you treat it as real, you could end up triggering a catastrophic, world-ending retaliation based on a simple computer error. Sitting at the console, facing this absolutely impossible choice, was a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov.
The alarms keep screaming until the screen shows a total of 5 incoming missiles, 5 nuclear warheads, supposedly hurtling toward the Soviet Union. Petrov had only a matter of minutes to figure out what he believed. Was this actually the end of the world, or just a digital ghost? To really grasp the massive weight of what Petrov was looking at on that screen, we kind of have to step back for a second and look at the world outside that bunker.
Section 1, 1983, a dangerous year. To understand why those 5 flashing alerts were such a big deal, we have to realize this wasn't happening in a vacuum. The US and the Soviet Union were trapped in this terrifying mirror image of paranoia. Both sides possessed these world-ending arsenals. On one hand, Soviet leaders genuinely feared the possibility of a surprise American first strike. On the other hand, American leaders were deeply fearful of Soviet aggression. Both sides basically had their fingers hovering right over the button, completely primed to misinterpret any signal as the beginning of the end.
And look, this wasn't just theoretical paranoia either. Only weeks before Petrov's night shift, a truly horrifying tragedy had happened. The Soviet Union shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007 after the civilian passenger plane accidentally entered Soviet airspace. All 269 people on board were killed. That incident dramatically spiked the already sky-high tensions between the superpowers. So this was not a calm, rational moment in history. It was exactly the kind of highly combustible environment where a simple misunderstanding could easily spark a global disaster.
Which brings us right back to the technology Petrov was relying on. He was the duty officer at Serpukhov 15, which was an early warning command center outside Moscow. The Soviets had recently deployed this brand new satellite-based warning system called OKO. Its whole purpose was to detect American intercontinental ballistic missile launches as early as humanly possible. This was supposed to solve a really terrifying problem. If leaders believe missiles are already heading toward them, they only have a few frantic minutes to decide if it's real and exactly how to respond. Section 2, the escalation from 1 to 5 missiles. So zooming back into that bunker, Petrov's specific job wasn't to push the button. It was to evaluate this data and report it up the chain of command. Now, the computer was stating with high confidence that a missile was on the way. But as he looked at the data, a pretty crucial thought entered his mind. Why only one missile? I mean, a genuine American first strike against the Soviet Union would presumably involve a massive wave of weapons, right? Not just one. Launching a single missile makes zero strategic sense because it would just give the Soviets every opportunity to easily retaliate. So heavily suspecting something was off, he waited for more information. But then, of course, the system escalates, bringing the total up to 5 missiles. One glitch? Sure, that's a malfunction. But 5? The machine is practically screaming that the attack is real. But Petrov methodically held his ground. He reasoned that even 5 missiles were strangely few for the start of an all-out nuclear war. On top of that, he noted there was absolutely no confirmation from their ground-based radar, and he knew perfectly well that this new OKO satellite system was relatively untested. You have this incredible moment where human doubt is actively countering machine certainty. Taking all of this into account, Petrov makes a monumental choice, one that would literally define the rest of his life. He decided to treat this high-confidence warning as a false alarm. And then, he just had to wait. Imagine those agonizing minutes. He chose not to report it as a real attack, knowing full well that if his logic was wrong, real nuclear warheads would soon begin detonating across Soviet territory, and he would have single-handedly delayed their only chance to respond. Section 3. What had the satellites actually seen? The minutes tick by. no explosions. The world keeps on spinning. Petrov had been absolutely right. But if there wasn't an attack, what on earth triggered the alarm? Well, it turned out to be a highly unusual scientific fluke. The system was fooled by a perfect storm of environmental factors. Sunlight had reflected off high-altitude clouds, and because of the very specific viewing geometry of the satellite at that exact moment, those reflections perfectly mimicked the fiery exhaust plumes of American missiles launching. The machines detected a terrifying attack that just didn't exist. It took a human being, looking at the wider context, to realize the computer's story made zero sense. Section 4. The man who saved the world? So, what happens to Stanislav Petrov after surviving this incredibly stressful night shift? You might expect a parade, but the incident actually remained a highly classified secret until long after the Soviet Union collapsed. Today, you'll often hear him called the man who saved the world. It's a really powerful, dramatic title, but the reality is just a bit more nuanced. Petrov didn't personally control the weapons. We also can't say with 100% certainty what the Soviet leaders would have done if he had reported the attack, because there were other confirmation systems and commanders involved. So saying he single-handedly stopped World War III may be a slight stretch. But he was a totally vital, crucial human link in the chain, and his refusal to blindly trust a machine stopped a false warning dead in its tracks. Honestly, what's truly remarkable here is Petrov's own grounded humility about the whole ordeal. He wasn't immediately hailed as a global hero. In fact, he was reportedly criticized right after the event over some aspects of his paperwork and documentation. When he finally received international peace awards decades later, he consistently pushed back against that hero label. As far as he was concerned, he was simply doing his job. And frankly, I think that quiet competence makes the whole story even more incredible. Section 5. The clue left behind. Now, this explainer isn't just a history lesson about a tense night in a Cold War bunker. The story of September 26, 1983 actually leaves behind a massive clue for us today. We are constantly having to balance the capabilities of machines against human judgment. I mean, computers process information at lightning speed. Algorithms are incredibly confident, and sensors see things that we just can't. But systems can be wrong. And when enormous stakes are on the line, we humans can fall into a really dangerous trap, believing the machine simply because it appears so certain. The computer saw 5 missiles, but Petrov saw a scenario that completely lacked logic. Which leaves us with a pretty vital question to ponder. How much should humans trust machines when the stakes are enormous? On that night back in 1983, history didn't change because someone pushed a button or launched an attack. History was saved because one guy decided that before he blindly believed the confident machine, he needed to verify the evidence. Sometimes history changes because of what someone chooses not to do. Time leaves clues, and it's up to us to follow them. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.